Max. Thank you for joining me today.
You're quite welcome, Ian.
All right, so in a few minutes, just tell us about yourself and what you do.
I started my career as a trial attorney, became AV rated, which is the top rating, consulted for President Reagan while working for Janet Reno in Miami, handling the first criminal age case, then did insurance defense. Then I went into the world of insurance. When you saw Billy Mays on TV selling insurance, that was mine. I bring products or have brought products to the Shark Tank people, made pies for Kevin Harrington. I set up distribution all over the world in sales. That's what I do, set up distribution.
And why did you start in law? What brought you to law?
I like to argue, but having practiced law, I found out that it gets tiresome when you do it for a living. So I decided I wanted to do something a lot more fun. And I never saw my kids because I was working, or my ex, I was working 80 hours a week. So for not enough money to justify the hours at work.
Okay. And how did you start in law?
Oh, in law, I went to the University of Virginia undergraduate. I didn't like accounting. I liked arguing. So I said, I'm going to get a degree in philosophy, took logic courses, and then applied to law school.
And how long were you in the business?
I started law in 1986. I'm still licensed, but I stopped practicing in December 7th, 2004.
And now your business is in distribution, right?
Setting up sales systems for companies around the world.
So tell us more about what you're doing now.
So some of my current projects are, I have a master distributor of 1,000 technologies. I'm getting additional distribution. I work with a fractional CFO and a fractional CIO company, getting them distribution. Quite likely you will see on TV in the next week, Lionsgate Insurance, which is owned by Lionsgate, will do a national television campaign. Their chief revenue officer is the guy who had ICANN Benefits, who had Billy Mays on TV, and I brought the insurance that Billy Mays sold. I am working with my former law partner, who has the only scalable domestic and international college admission consulting service. We just landed one of the top 4 insurance brokerage houses in the world yesterday. Those are the types of things I'm doing right now.
Wonderful. And why did you pick the distribution industry? What brought you to that?
The skill set of a lawyer is take no prisoners. No is not an answer. Persistence is key. I've been abused by judges, so getting a no in something is nothing compared to that. So it's fun. I wake up every day wanting it to be an hour that I'm allowed to call people. And I hate going to bed because I want to call more people.
And what would you say makes you different from competitors?
I have developed a skill set, and it's developed. I'm naturally an affable person, but I've come to discover that if you let people tell you how to sell them, which comes down to just keeping in touch with them, and when the time is right, they'll tell you how to sell them. I got good advice from a friend of mine in Utah, and he said, you're calling them too much. This is when I first started in sales. Just keep in touch. Don't ask for business. And when the time is right, it's great. So I have a network. Pretty much I or someone I know can get you any product or service or distribution for any product service around the world. I've built up a network all over the world.
That's wonderful. So what are some of the most challenging obstacles you encountered in becoming successful as an entrepreneur?
Learning how to sell. So first off, cold calling should never be cold calling. Cold calling should be, I've determined it's a process, a scientific process. You have a very short period of time to make a human connection, so they'll listen to you long enough so you can tell them what you're calling about, and then have to be affable and smart enough to hear the poignant pauses, the tones of voices. And so one is preparation. You prep for everything. That is a skill set learned as a lawyer. The other is listening. So I wrote my thesis for law school as to who is a better negotiator. So I posed the question to you, who is a better negotiator, a man or a woman, and why? What's the answer to the question?
Ooh. I'm not sure I have an answer. I haven't really
Well,
thought.
it's women by
Really.
far. So if you go back through your life and analyze, you will find out that women process more information of different types more quickly. Therefore, they have the data. Whoever has the most data that's analyzed is the winner of negotiations. So men can get there, but hold on, pardon me. Men can get there, but women have an advantage based on history. So women were taught how to equalize the difference between the physical strength of men and women by what men called conniving, manipulation. No, it's not conniving or manipulation. There's nothing bad about it. They pick up more data. They look at your body language. I'm sitting back. Why? Well, I'm sitting back because my back hurts, but it could be that I'm casual. They look at tone of voice. They remember everything you've ever done and not consciously, and synthesize an act you do today with an act you've done in the past and go, Ian, dude, I told you 3 years ago on this date when you're wearing these clothes not to do that again. And yet you did it. Why? Right. So this part I take no credit for. Someone came up with a summation of physical representation of what I described. A guy's name is Richard Manners. I worked for him. Richard said, women think like spaghetti and men think like waffles. Women see all the connections. Men are connular. Things get siloed. So the world, in my opinion, would be better off if men trained on what women naturally do. If you talk to any friend of yours who's a woman, in her teen years, she would go to a slumber party with her girlfriends. And in that slumber party, there would be 5 conversations. She'd be up to speed on all conversations because they can pull out of your mind. You gather all the information. And I know it to be true because when I took acting classes, we had different parts of our acting class were realizing that your brain collects all the data, you have to pull it out. And women do that much more naturally than we do because practice makes perfect.
And how would you say we practice that?
How do you practice that? What would you say is the hardest thing for any human being to do? To actually be silent in his head, not have the inner voice talk, and listen to someone else. So you have to force your inner voice to shut up and listen. Okay. So, for example, I'm watching you. You're very serious because you don't realize it. Your lips are pursed, right? Right. Then you get a smile and go a little embarrassment because I pointed out, but most people can read the face if you pay attention. But if you're thinking about what you're going to say, you're not paying attention to the other person. They're giving you a great deal of information that you're not consciously, your brain's got it, but then you have to pull it out. But if you can settle your inner voice, you can actually listen to someone. That's the key to sales. That's the key to success in business. That is the key to successful marriage, dating, children. And was I great at it my whole life? No, it's a process to learn it. But the quicker you start to try and learn it, the better off you'll be in everything.
So when did you feel that you have mastered this?
I don't feel that I have mastered it yet.
I am.
Because that exhibits way too much hubris, right? You mastered as much as you're going to get the day you fall in the coffin. That's about it.
That's right. So what accomplishments are you most proud of?
My children and taking care of my elderly mother.
And in your professional life?
Um, I don't know that I have one that most proud. It was fun as a young guy to get on international TV and then consult for our president. But I don't know. I mean, I just landed a very large deal that yesterday with college consulting with one of the largest insurance operations in the world in 120 countries. But my joy is not in winning the deal. It's getting them to the point to win the deal, right? I'm a hunter. So I set up most of my business relationships where I bring it to the table, I hunt it, I shoot it, I slice it and dice it, and then they cook it. Because do I really like cooking the deals? No, that's operational stuff. That's not, but hunting stuff, I get up every morning and get the bow, the guns, and go out hunting.
What would you say is the biggest reason why many entrepreneurs give up? Right. Well, what is the mindset it takes to be successful like you are?
Well, not giving up. Many people have said it, and it's so true. You are sure to fail if you give up. Now, you might have to reposition, but giving up should never be an option, right? Because it's guaranteed failure. So the key is, if you're not getting what you want, you have to be self-critical. Okay. I taught my children that the greatest thing that they could ever do in life is make a lot of mistakes. Mistakes are awesome. It's the greatest thing. Embrace them. You're going to make them, so you might as well embrace them and then learn from them, just like everyone else said. I mean, most things in life that I'm saying that might be inspirational, someone, a million people have said a million times before. All true. You have to make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and then accept the fact that you're not Jesus Christ, therefore you're not perfect. If you were, you wouldn't be in business. You'd be the son of God. So there you go.
Many people are too afraid to take the chance to make a mistake, so they stay in their comfort zone.
Well, no, that in and of itself is the mistake, right? You cannot succeed in love, family, business, spiritual growth by not taking risks. That is a cultural problem we have in your generation and the generation in front of you. People are afraid to make mistakes. So what? And pick yourself back up. And if you need to go to counseling, go. Counseling I believe, is overused because it's a crutch. There are times you need it, but you have to learn how to process failure. Failure is good. There is not one successful human being that might be put on a pedestal as a great business person who has not made a lot more mistakes than we in the public know. They might show that they made this or that or the other. They made lots of mistakes, because you cannot succeed without making mistakes, because you take risk. We are in a litigious culture. You could be sued for anything. That was one of my favorite things as lawyers, come up with new lawsuits. Okay. You could be sued for anything. You don't know if you're making mistakes. I had a professor, Professor Bennett, God rest his soul, first day of evidence class. He said, who here has violated the law? No one raised their hand. He said, you're wrong. Every one of you has violated the law and you have no idea. Why? It's impossible not. There's too many laws. There's 89,000 municipalities, 50 governments and the federal government, and they all have sets of laws. It's impossible not to have, and even if you could comply with them, then you couldn't comply because of a judge's interpretation of it. So the answer is every one of us violates the law every day. And if you live in that box, I'm not going to do anything because I violate the law, or I'm not going to do anything because I could fail. Well, then you're going to have a life of failure guaranteed.
So speaking of entrepreneurs and leaders that that we look up to today, what are some that you looked up to throughout the process of growing into the businessman you are today?
I will tell you who I learned from versus looked up to. I think looking up is something I don't aspire to do or recommend anyone do. Because then you're putting them on a pedestal and you're consciously making an effort to ignore their faults and their mistakes. Bill Gates is an example. He didn't give up. He started from his garage and became a billionaire. Your light just went off there.
Yeah. There we go. Fixed it. Sorry.
There we go. There's an attorney who was also a doctor, a guy named Nick Martinez. So his first case after getting his MD license and law degree and license was against me. And he kicked my butt because we were deposing a doctor, and he was able, he understood how to make the apple look like an orange when it came to a back injury. And we become friends, which this is going on 40 years ago. He had an extremely successful legal career. He's now writing a movie script. He has done a lot of charity work. So there are lots of people I actually admired, and at the same time had problems with Janet Reno. Janet Reno was brilliant. I mean, scary brilliant, but too political for my liking. I was interviewed and originally rejected by Reno's office after a series of hypotheticals in my interview where I ended up saying if something was illegal and I observed it and they wouldn't do anything, if Miss Reno said she wouldn't prosecute it, I would go to the Miami Herald. Well, I then told that story to the person who recommended me to Reno, George Sheldon. 4 days later, I get an offer. I don't understand why. George would never tell me why. But then I read a story upon Attorney General Reno's passing, where she had interviewed with the then state attorney to get a job. And the state attorney threw similar political questions at her, where she stood up to the state attorney. So I surmise that George Sheldon told her something to the effect, Janet, it's quite hypocritical that you stood up to Judge Gershon, who was the gentleman who was the state attorney at the time, and then you rejected Max, which is my first name. And that's the reason. But it occurred while I was working there. I had a case where I disagreed with the analysis of the police, and without putting myself in a position of a libel slander case, things occurred that made it such that I had a reasonable doubt as a prosecutor as to whether or not there was a battery on a police officer. There was one charge that was absolute, no doubt the defendant did. So I interviewed the officers multiple times, spoke to my supervisor, and upon my supervisor's approval, I informed the officers that the felony case would not be proceeding, it would be dropped. I appeared on the front page of the Miami Herald, and the next morning I was called into the number two's office for a dressing down. And I sort of blunted that. And I said, Kevin, do you remember you were in the interview when you interviewed me to get the job? So this is a situation similar to what your hypothetical was. Here's my badge. If you want it, you can have it, because I refuse to prosecute the case. So hopefully that answered your question. A little long-winded.
No, it does. So what did you learn from Reno or the other lawyer who?
Everything in life is politics. Everything in your marriage, everything with your kids, everything with your friends, everything in business, it's politics. I pose a hypothetical to you. Who was the #1 salesman in the history of the world and why? Which will prove my politics point.
Possibly the president.
Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
And I'm a Jewish guy who converted, but I'm a Jewish guy. So why is he? Everything of modern advertising is in the Bible. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, and repeat it because humans are stupid. All right. That's the underpinnings of advertising in every country in the world. Who's got the most followers? Him. Why? Because he did the best job of marketing. Okay. But religion is politics. Okay. The application of religion is politics. Same is true because politics is sales. Everything in your whole life is sales. You sell a young lady to go out on a date with you, and she sells you to take her out for a second date, or vice versa, depending on the scenario. What you do with your children, convince them to do that and not this. That's sales. Because sales is getting someone to believe the position you want them to believe. And the #1 thing that I learned from a guy named John Edward Allen, he was one of the top labor attorneys in my generation. Well, he was a generation ahead of me. He's 20 years older than I. Is people learn when they're laughing. Never tell a joke, but people learn when they're laughing. And they'll remember what you taught them because you made it humorous. Okay. Second, make it simple. Ernest Hemingway was one of the greatest writers in the history of literary luminaries because he wrote with declarative sentences, very few adjectives. And he made it stupid simple. And if you make it stupid simple, the simple people, which is all of us, get it.
It's pretty valuable lessons that you've learned.
Well, I'm old. See, that you get them because you're old.
Yeah,
By the time you get to my age, I'll be dead.
I'm learning a lot just from having this one interview with you. That's great. So what's one of your biggest financial lessons for people that are starting their own businesses? So business insight or a financial lesson?
What you need to do is if you're going to start, you better have 6 months to a year's worth of money to live on. Because however quick you project your revenue to come in, it's not going to come in the time frame you say. It just isn't. Never does. So you need to have a cushion.
Being prepared. That's right. So what about people who are still working their 9 to 5 and then doing their business when they get home?
Then hustle more.
Hustle more. Yeah.
Right. What I taught my kids and what I was taught, I started jobs at 5 years old. There are very few things that I was told, or my children, you can learn anything if you learn how to teach yourself. That's what school is about. The #1 thing in school is where to find information and how to absorb it. The substance of what you learn is to a great extent irrelevant unless you go into a specific field like medicine or engineering.
Right.
But for most people in business, it's self-taught information. And just keep reading and reading and ask for advice. It is a true statement. There is no dumb question. Ask as many questions as you can, as early as you can, but be respectful. Take notes or seek permission to record it so you don't have to ask the person again. But it's hustle, right? And get on the phone, right? If you're going to go into sales, first, even if you want to use a lead generation service, you need to know what you're going to be asking, because you need to know what's going to sell, because you're paying for the lead service. And the other thing is, don't go off half-cocked. You need to know whatever you're selling, whatever you're trying to sell, better than you could possibly imagine. I'll ask you, why am I telling you that? So I ask you, Ian, why am I telling you that?
If they give some sort of objection or have any specific questions and you don't know how to answer it, then
That's a secondary issue. The number one reason is this. If you know your product backwards and forward, you can tell your brain to shut up and listen to Ian, because Ian is going to give me information. Right now, Ian is very intent on listening to me. I see it in the eyes. There's concentration in the eyes. You have a habit. You're cocking your head to one angle when you're concentrating. When I say it's true, you get a little smile on your face. Someone who knows their product has to pay attention to all this, because they're either buy signs or negative signs that you have to get, because you have to do everything just like you're on a date. Imagine you're on a date. You're into the girl. You're paying attention because she's going to give you signs, right? That's what guys are taught. Well, there's zero difference between being on a date and being on a sales call. Same damn thing, right? And you smile and you go, well, he's probably right. It's true, right? And so you got to know your product so much that you're only listening to Ian. So everyone listen to Ian. He knows what the hell he's talking about.
And has mentorship really helped you grow?
Oh, yeah. I've been blessed. I have two ridiculously rich guys who, one of them I'm on the board of this, you know what a CLIA lab is, CLIA certified lab, the highest. So it's the highest certified. It's a federal approved lab by the FDA and the DEA. I'm on his board. He's one of my mentors. I have another guy. Do you remember well, you're not old enough, but there was about 20 years ago, pop-up showed on the internet saying, finish your college degree.
No, I wasn't.
Well, that was owned by a guy, the company was Compass Knowledge. This guy sold it to Milken for $250 million. So he's been a mentor, and I bird dog for both of those guys. I've had a guy who has several, probably 40,000 people in Latin America on insurance. One of the top Latin American insurance executives have been a mentor. I ran an insurance brokerage for him. And then I've had personal mentors, and my closest friend, we've known each other, 52 years. One of the smartest human beings I met, PhD in engineering, 100. He inspired me. He has 125 patents. So he inspired me. I said, I can't go down and die before I get one patent, and you got 120, Stern. So I'm coming out with 2 and working on my 3rd.
You mentioned that in our previous call. I know we won't go into it right now, but so throughout your mentorship, what is?
I've lost you there, Ian. Are you there?
Is one of the biggest real, especially. Oh, hello.
Yeah, you got to start back the question because you clicked out there for a second.
Oh, okay. So throughout your mentorship and growing as a businessman, what's one of the biggest realizations you made about yourself personally and professionally?
It's all in one. I can be emotionally driven from the perspective of worrying. And everyone said that's a waste of your energy. So that has diminished over time. When I was practicing law, my former law partner instituted a rule that if they saw me turn green, because I was hyperventilating, thinking that I did something wrong, and I never had a malpractice suit or a bar complaint stick. They all a bunch of bull, but they were all dismissed. They would force me to go walk around the block for half a mile before I was allowed back in the building. So now, over the years, very few things faze me, and it makes it much easier to be successful in business when I'm not worrying about what I did wrong.
Worrying doesn't help at all, and the end
No,
result.
it doesn't. But it's very hard if that's your nature. So you got to fight against the ill in your nature, and that'll allow you to enhance the good in your nature.
Right. And what causes do you care about most in philanthropy?
Feeding the homeless and domestic violence. I worked with the Honorable Maggie Rosenbaum. She was not a judge at the time. She was my boss as a prosecutor. And she started the first domestic violence prosecution unit in the United States. And she was the first to explain why someone who was a victim of domestic violence might not try and escape. So between feeding those in need and domestic violence, those are my two causes.
So what do you think about the homeless problem in Los Angeles, which is where I am? Do you think there are solutions?
The solution is that we need to, as a country, if I could play emperor for about a year and a half, number one, everyone would have a house because they can build houses very cost effectively. In the end, it's much more cost effective to do that than to pay the costs that arise from homelessness. Number two, we have the ability to feed everybody in this country. It's there. We just don't direct our resources to do it. Number three, I would not be loved. I would arrest and violate the Constitution. I would suspend the Constitution. If you're a gang member, you're going to jail unless you renounce in 90 days. Because Maslow, the psychologist, was correct. You have to have basic stability in order to have all the higher level actualizations occur. So you have to have stability in health, stability in crime, stability in home, stability in food, stability in a job. And then in those scenarios, the good in human comes out. But if you look at every major conflict that has occurred in the history of the world, it was caused by one or more of the instabilities I just described. And unfortunately, humans are less kind to each other than they should be, and hoard and all that other stuff.
So do you think that even if we were to build houses to house everyone in Los Angeles, for example, do you think there would still be a subset of the homeless population that would choose to just be outside? And what would you do regarding the people who choose to be outside?
All right. So I think the United States Supreme Court made an error in the 60s. There are people who have psychiatric conditions who will not be medication compliant. And that would probably be the population you described. And many of those are a danger to the community. They shouldn't have been let out. When I was a prosecutor under Janet Reno and handled the case, I was asked by Admiral Watkins to write a memo on how I thought AIDS, this was in the early mid 1980s, it was just coming out, what should occur to prostitutes who were recidivist. And I suggested, and I cited U.S. Supreme Court case law dealing with tuberculosis. And in tuberculosis cases, the state governments were allowed to institutionalize people with tuberculosis if they were non-compliant on the conditions required to be outside of hospitals. And I proposed that any prostitute who continued after being told not to, next time they're arrested, they would be put into a hospital until such time as they could prove that they would not have unprotected sex. And so I think there will be a population that will not want to go into homes, but they have to be analyzed as whether or not, if they are not a danger, then create outdoor parks for them. If they are a danger, create a process to institutionalize them. I don't know what percentage will be what, but the good of the majority will have to rule over the individual, in my opinion, if they are a danger to society. And that's been proven. I mean, there are state laws right now that allow you to institutionalize people after their criminal sentences are over if they are a danger to the community.
Right. Thank you for sharing this. That was very insightful. And what is a message you'd like to leave with the audience? Final message.
The final message is what I told my kids. All of you can be Newmans. Newmans never give up, ever. It's not an option. You're on this earth. You have a gift. You will never be the greatest for more than 1 second in your life. Pelé was the greatest, the only athlete in the history of the world to stop a war. But there are better soccer players than Pelé. And it's true in everything that you do. You may have your one moment in the sun, and if it ends, you had your moment in the sun. Find something else to try and excel in.
Never give up. Yeah,
Never give up.
a lot of people give up before they, they could be a couple months from seeing their success, but they throw.
Well, I'll give you an example. So my former law partner and I started in 2014 to scale his business. When I explained to him what it would take to scale in the insurance industry, which he had defended insurance cases, but didn't know how the industry worked in selling products, he didn't have the infrastructure. So we both decided to shelve it until he could put the infrastructure in place. So 2014, 14 weeks ago, I get a call from him. I have this, and this. I'm ready to go. And he said, okay, if you're ready to go. Well, in 14 weeks, he has 42 distributions. So I've waited almost 9 years. And yesterday we landed something. When it rolls out next year, I mean, I'll be working for fun, not for a living. And it doesn't take a lot, but it took almost 9 years, because the one thing that you just learned from what I said is don't give up. Realize you aren't ready to do X, get it put in place so you can do X. And then 9 years later, do X. Well, now my former law partner, I would say I'm the one that is very emotional. He is a human poker player. He was giddy. Just imagine a 5-year-old in a candy shop for the first time. After we had the meeting yesterday that was supposed to be 2 hours, it went 4 hours because they were so excited. Can we do this? Yep. Can you do that? Yep. Can we do this, and this, and over there? Yep. It was like talking to someone I didn't know.
Wow.
9 years later.
And I'm sure you can't divulge on air what it is that you.
Oh no, I can divulge on air. I can't divulge who is the brokerage who took it on.
Okay.
But we landed their 10 top insurance brokerages in the world. One of the top 10 had a team of 8 people in a room, and we landed them for the only scalable undergraduate and graduate admission consulting service in the world. So it is now a new form of voluntary executive and association benefit that will be offered in 120 countries on rollout.
So what it is that the service that you provide?
It helps prep the kids if they want help on what extracurriculars to do, how to get references, if you want SAT prep, ACT prep, helps you pick the pool of schools you want to apply to, identify the topic for your essay or essays, teach you how to write a college essay, which is very different than how you've been taught to write in high school. My former law partner was a college athlete, so he can teach you how to do both alumni interviews, because he did the Harvard alumni interviews for Central Florida for 26 years. And he can also teach you on how to do coaches. They then, for the graduate school, have a similar thing of what to take, extracurriculars, references, essays for graduate school. And this is for the United States, Canada, pardon me, and Great Britain.
Well, that's very valuable, because I noticed when I was in college, the high school format doesn't work at all.
No. And interestingly enough, this guy's brilliant. So there are 4 types of learners. He will be launching in January an online test that will tell you which type of learner you are. And then he's identified out of the top, I think, 300 schools, which schools best match your type of learning.
That's a lot of data pooling to figure out where to send certain
Well,
people.
yeah, and he goes outside of the top 300-400, so he'll help kids get into any of the 5,000 college or university, or even into community colleges.
Right. So for people, the follow-up question, kind of unrelated, for people and families that aren't maybe not as affluent, have as much income for college, the undergraduate years, at least the first 2, tend to be more general courses. Do you recommend people go to a community college for the first 2 and then finish out at a?
The answer is that it is a question that doesn't have enough data points to properly answer. There could be kids who might get a full scholarship to Harvard or Princeton or Yale, who are from underprivileged circumstances, or community college might be the best. Bob and his team identify all the opportunities for financial aid. Also, there is a app which I identified to Bob, and I think he uses that as one of it, called Schooly. And Schooly has like 500,000 or 600,000 different scholarship descriptions, where you can then go to the website and apply for. But the answer is, first decide if you think college is for you. Okay. College is not for everybody. And there is nothing wrong not going to college. There are a lot of very successful people, Bill Gates among them, who don't go to college and they make zillions of dollars and are happy. So college is for some. For example, if you need to do engineering or
STEM field,
medicine, anything that requires a license other than like real estate, then you might not need college. It all depends on what you want. Is there an advantage to college even if you want to be an entrepreneur? Yes. Just like there's an extra advantage for me having a law degree and a license. It gives you whether deserved or not, people give you credence based on your degree. And the more degrees you have, there's a certain subset of America or internationally will give you credence because of the degree. Because the degree does show an ability to stick to it. Because there's a lot of stupidness in college. You take courses that you have to take. And I have 2 boys in college now. Both of my boys are working in their chosen fields, earning between 60 and $50 and $60,000 a year while going to college. And I said, the reality is I am going to push you to finish it, because there's a subset of America that gives you credence if you have the ticket. Doesn't matter what it's in, but when you combine working at brand name companies while you're going to college, earning that kind of money and a degree, it gives you a leg up.
Right. Yeah. College is definitely not for everybody. And, personally for me, I went for 1 year at Penn State and then I left to move to the West Coast to
And now you're a financial planner. So there you go.
and I went, it's funny, I went to college for finance. So I ended up doing exactly what I wanted to do. But now I just have my own practice. Yeah. So thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate
You're
it.
quite welcome.
Yeah. You're very wise.
Well, thank you. I don't know that I'm that wise. It's just lived a long life so far.
I found it pretty funny. You could just read my facial expressions and everything. That was good.
That's how I got. Let me show. Are we still on?
Yeah, we're still on.
Okay. So everyone, this is why you want to read the facial expressions. This is what we call the wall of happiness. So you've seen my picture. Okay. I am a nerd. So this woman is college educated, speaks 3 languages, family oriented, and has a degree in art. And that comes from reading facial expressions, because I swooned her, because it's definitely not for my GQ looks.
Thank you for joining me. It was really a pleasure, and I actually learned a lot from you, and I'm sure the audience will too.
Thank you much.